Right, so 11 o'clock has arrived. Welcome. Thank you all for coming. This is our third Saturday of the Essence of Bhakti. And last week we discovered what Krishna is all about, what he wants from his life. Right? What is his desire from us? Right? And that was, we'll call it divine love. And and when we talk about love, we made that distinction, right, between what we consider love here, the experience we have of love, and actual divine love. So we mentioned how the soul can experience three states of being. Right? The current state that we're in now, we feel incomplete. We feel some areas of emptiness. We feel desire. We don't feel a full internal happiness. So many times when people pursue spiritual lives, they're trying to move towards full satisfaction. The state of the soul is filled with joy and happiness. It has no incompleteness. It has no emptinesses. There's no desire. It radiates with a joy. It's prasanatma. And so divine love is a love that has to spring from that platform. Here, a lot of what we call love is desire. Something or someone makes us happy in many ways, and we appreciate that. So there's a selfish element there. And we feel that when we're upset when that thing ends. We feel empty if the connection ends. The emptiness returns. So with Krishna, we're dealing with a situation where pure souls who attain this state of full satisfaction overflow with connection with Krishna's all attractiveness. And they overflow with this spontaneous desire to make Krishna happy. We gave a couple of analogies. Sometimes it happens when we see little babies, we want to make them happy, even if they're not our babies. We may not see them again. Or little, sometimes puppies or kittens, you want to make them happy. Not any real purpose of your own, but just to see them happy. It's kind of motive. There's a certain spontaneity that comes out. With Krishna, he's so, we can just understand this theoretically, that he's the source of everything that's beautiful, the source of everything that's charming, the source of everything that's wonderful. So how amazing must he be? And so when pure souls come into contact with him, it's a spontaneous desire. It has nothing to do with their desires. It has nothing to do with any kind of emptiness within anything. It's just it's overwhelming and so wonderful that you just want to do something for him. We use that example of a couple of examples are there in the Bhagavatam. There's Narad Muni in his past life when he saw the super soul in his heart. And the way Prabhupada translates, he said all of his different senses, all of his different faculties spontaneously wanted to do something wanted to serve that being. There was no notion of should or what I can get from it, just immediately, wow. And then there's the example of Dhruva Maharaj, who initially had worshipped the Lord because he wanted a kingdom greater than any of his predecessors, any of his family members. He was not going to be able to inherit the kingdom of his father because his father had a different wife than his mother, who was his favorite. And so her son was going to inherit the kingdom, and he was not going to have that opportunity. So, and he was very disturbed. And so his mother said, well, you go to the forest and worship God, or go worship God. And he says, where can you find him? Go to the wilderness and find him. So he began to worship for that. It was a selfish purpose. But then when finally, because of his blessings he got from Narad Muni and his very intense practice, he got to see Lord Vishnu face to face, the Vishnu form of Lord Krishna. And as soon as he saw him, his mind was opened And he compared Lord Vishnu to a jewel, and all of his desires he had for a kingdom to be like broken glass, worthless. And so it completely changed his view of things. So there's this. So this is what Krishna wants. This is for him. This is the highest thing. He can be. He is self-satisfied by nature, but he finds this way to make something better, which means that the devotees, they're charmed by him and have an intense love for him, and that love touches his heart, and he returns that love. So they want only his happiness, he wants only theirs. And there's no selfish motivation on either side. This is divine love. This is the meaning of the universe. If you want to come down to what is the meaning of existence, this is what it is. Krishna is engaged in this for eternity. It is wonderful enough that he has all possibilities. And this is the possibility he's chosen for his existence. And the good thing is, we're invited to that. Krishna says, you come and join this party. It's going on now, but you can participate. This is the part that's really excellent. The thing that Krishna has set aside for himself. We talked about, somebody who is eternal has time to consider all possibilities. Somebody who has all capacity for intelligence and understanding and creativity can come up with infinite possibilities, and he has the power to do anything he likes, create any existence he wants, create any world he wants, create himself to be anything he wants, to create others to be any way he wants them. He has all those things. So the thing he's come up with must be pretty awesome. And he's inviting us to join him in that. So it's a pretty powerful invitation. Because this divine love is so different than ordinary love, it can't be imitated. And this can't be stressed overly much. We will hear about Krishna if we read in the Krishna book or we hear in Bhagavatam, how Krishna interacts with his various devotees, his eternal associates. He has his cowherd friends. He has his mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj's parents. Right? He has the gopis with whom there's romantic relationships. And so we may think, right, that we can just kind of just step right in there. Okay, let me be buddies with Krishna. Wouldn't it be great? Right? I want to enter into that situation right now. And so I'll just pretend like I'm Krishna's friend, like I'm one of his cowherd boys. I'll have friendly relationship with him. Or I'll try to do that with as much love as I have in me. Okay. Prabhupada calls that sahaja-ism, or cheap pretending. And it won't help us because divine love comes from the pure soul. And our souls are not pure. We're caught up and entangled in the material world, in our physical bodies, in our minds. And so we cannot in our current condition have actual divine love. So we're just pretending. We're extrapolating from our ordinary experience and trying to put that on top of Krishna. Well, Krishna has something that's far, far beyond our own regular experience. And trying to pretend isn't going to help us. We have to put ourselves into a condition where we can also have the ability to generate divine love, to participate in divine love. We just can't just imagine, because we don't have what it takes. We don't know what we're trying to imagine fully. Right? All we're doing is extrapolating from our current not so great existence. So what do we do if we want to end up in the situation where we can have this divine love? Is we have to connect ourselves with Krishna. And Prabhupada uses this one. It's a simple example, but it's really powerful. He uses the example of taking a piece of iron and putting it in the fire. And if you keep the iron in the fire, he says, it takes on the properties of fire. You pull it out and it's hot. It's glowing. It'll burn you. You can light things on fire with it. It causes light to come out. We said that, so if we want to come to our spiritual wholeness, we have to connect with the source of all that, Krishna. And by connection with him, our spirit awakens. All the different impurities, if you have impurities on top of the iron, it will burn away in the fire. All the coverings, and you get the real pure thing. So there has to be a connection with Krishna. And that's usually, we call that sadhana, some practice, some way to be connected with him. And the connection with Krishna really does the work. We'll talk about this more in the next couple of classes about how that works. But that's what happens. By being connected with Krishna, all the different things that are inhibiting us, all the different entanglements that we have, and reservations we have, and obstacles we have, can be removed simply by the power of being in proximity with Krishna. Now, how do we do that? Or why do we do that? This is the next question. What gives us the incentive, the motivation, the impetus for doing that? And of course, the main thing we have, right, is we have chanting the holy name is a huge, powerful thing, and so many other types of service that we can do. We can study about Krishna. We can we're learning about Krishna. We can speak about Krishna. We can, there's the various different types of services which are available, and particularly the chanting of the holy name of Krishna puts us in touch with Krishna. So what gets us fired up to be able to do that? Because even, the concept of this divine love is a motivation in itself, but because we don't have a deep experience with it, it doesn't have the effect it should. And without a deep experience of Krishna's all attractiveness, I say that for the pure devotees who are acting from the soul level, their motivation is Krishna's all attractiveness. It just spontaneously bursts out of their heart. And so it's I would say, a motivationless motivation. It has no selfish motivation. They see Krishna and they just want to make him happy. And they're not even considering what that does for them. It's just, they don't have time for that. Krishna is so wonderful, captures their whole being. And so it's an impetus, but it's not a selfish motivation. They don't think, what am I going to get out of this? They got Krishna out of it already. That's so they couldn't have anything more. That's no longer a situation anymore. That kind of question never happens. Prabhupada says that the pure devotees don't know how to sense or to experience happiness except by seeing Krishna being happy. It's a full absorption in Krishna's pleasure, but there isn't any bandwidth for them to start to say, how am I feeling? How am I doing? They go and think, how's Krishna doing? We can't really relate to that. We haven't experienced anything quite like that. So we need, in our position, we need a motivation, a selfish motivation, because we're interested in ourselves now. Krishna hasn't taken us all the way out of ourselves yet. That's harmonious with attaining divine love. Right? So we need a motivation, but it has to be one that's harmonious with that. Okay? And Prabhupada gives us a couple of them that are quite interesting. And you'll hear him, Prabhupada, say these things quite often. Right? And so one of the things he tells us, a motivation we have, is this: we can reflect. So we have this, we have a potential to rise above the kind of life we're living now that has some weaknesses. Number one, it's temporary. So you hear Prabhupada talk a lot about that our lives are temporary. And whatever we gain in this life, right, we'll lose it at the time of death. We all, you ask everybody, you want to be happy? Do you want to be happy? And I think most people anyway will say yes. Right? Probably everybody. And if you ask people, how long do you want to be happy? Forever. Right? like 10 days, 20 days. No, all the time. So Prabhupada says in this world, in this dimension, in this situation, we have a temporary life that is lacking in knowledge. We don't even really understand who we are fully. And it is overstocked with unhappiness. We have things that that cause us to be unhappy, to be miserable, to have suffering of various kinds. And there's too much of it. It's well stocked. We get too much of that kind of stuff. If nothing else, even if we have a happy life, Prabhupada says there's the kind of innate miseries, right? Birth, death, old age, and disease. If any of us have been around for a while, may notice the decline that happens with old age. So even if life's been pretty good, that's happened. We've all had things that happen to us that have been unpleasant. So he says that if we entered into Krishna's realm, we have a chance to trade that in for an eternal life filled with knowledge and blissfulness. This is what so Prabhupada says we can take a look at our current situation and realize that there's certain intrinsic problems that can't be solved. But we have an opportunity to trade that in for something much, much better. Temporary life of misery and ignorance for an eternal life of bliss and knowledge. Now, the reason why that is a selfish motivation, right? We're thinking of ourselves. The reason why that is compatible with divine love, Prabhupada explains. There's a verse in, well, it comes originally from Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It's quoted in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Rupa Goswami defines pure bhakti, Uttama bhakti, the highest bhakti. And he says it's Anya Balashita Shunyam, which means, and when Prabhupada translates that in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he has the word for word translations in there. And the Anya Balashita Shunyam means without. So without an ulterior motive. He says, first of all, he says it's that you only want to please Krishna. So this is what we're talking about with divine love, right? The only motivation is Krishna's pleasure. There's not a selfish motivation. And then he goes, comma. And he says, or without material desires. Or without material desires. So that's where we can't do the first one where it's just about Krishna's pleasure because we don't have divine love. We still are, our soul is not fully active. We still have a feeling of lacking. We still have a feeling of emptiness. We still have desires, selfish desires. We can't avoid that yet. We can't just jump. So Prabhupada's saying is that we have to develop at first. The first thing we have to do is develop a kind of a broader perspective on ourselves. It's possible, and Krishna says it's okay to do this in the Bhagavatam. He says whether you have all desires or no desires, the desire for liberation, you worship me intensely. Tivrena bhakti yogena. But if we and Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, many times people come to him because they have a problem they want solved. Right? They want something that they can't attain, or they have some difficulty that they can't overcome without help. Okay? Now, those are legitimate reasons to approach Krishna, but they are not harmonious with attaining divine love, because they're situated here within this realm. It's a limited thing. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, I think I said this last, told that story about where there was a person whose job was to pull barges along a canal, and he had bare feet, and his feet were getting damaged from that work, and he was offered the opportunity to get anything he would like. Here's your I'm not sure how it came about. Somehow he got that. Anything you want, you can get. And he thought, oh, if only we could put some padding down along the side of the canal, then my feet would be, so much appreciative of that. Right? He didn't think, let me get a better job, right? Get out of this job, you don't want to pad the pathway along pulling the barges. Right? So he had a lack of imagination that kept him, too narrowly focused. So if we take Krishna to be someone who can just kind of tweak our lives here on this earth, then we're a little bit like that guy. We lack a certain imagination. And so Prabhupada says, at least we should broaden our horizons. If we understand this concept of divine love, this is something that happens on a different platform. And so we should set our sights, our aspirations higher. So you broader aspirations. We should aspire for more than that. And that opens the ways. It's still a selfish motivation. We're still thinking of our well-being. But it becomes harmonious with the ultimate attainment of divine love, because it's taken up to a higher level. And it's something we can kind of, sink our teeth into right now. We all feel the difficulties with being temporary. We feel the difficulties without having full understanding, and we feel the difficulties of having the material miseries. We know this about our lives. So instead of trying to solve this one or get this, just clear the whole thing out. Change your position. Aim for a better situation. Get a different job, Don't keep pulling the barge. So Krishna says if we broaden our aspirations, that's a beginning. And so we can be motivated to that. And that can help us to be connected with Krishna and practice devotional service in various ways. And that can, so that'll give us the motivation to do it, and that allows us to then gain some of the benefit of being connected with Krishna. It's like that. And then the second thing that Prabhupada will mention a lot of different times, he says, if you serve Krishna, you will become happy. And this is, and here he's not talking about the divine love. He's just talking here and now. He says, if you serve Krishna, you will get this spontaneous happiness. Usually Prabhupada calls it the higher taste. And in Bhagavad Gita, the word, the Sanskrit used is param drishtva, which means to perceive something higher. And Prabhupada, he oftentimes quotes from the Srimad Bhagavatam. There's a verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam that explains how this works. Because generally, right, if we please somebody else, sometimes that also makes us happy because we like to see the other person pleased. But, we also have to worry about us. So why does serving Krishna or pleasing Krishna please us? And he explains it. There's the Srimad Bhagavatam has this one verse that uses two examples. He says that the stomach is the place where energy is produced for the whole body. So, because when you have an organism, you have specialized organs that do certain specialized functions that the other ones can't do. The lungs can't pump the blood. Right? The heart can't digest food. The liver can't, nothing else can do what the liver does, and the liver can't do anything else what the liver does. And this is also in the same way, the roots of a tree are where the water comes from, who gets distributed to the rest of the tree. You can pour some plants you can absorb some water through the leaves, but generally not enough to keep them alive. So the water has to go into the root, and then it goes to the rest of the tree because it's a connected organism. When the food is in the stomach, there's energy which goes out through the whole body. And so he compares, because we understood that Krishna is everything. In one sense, we can look at all of existence as being one organism. And the analogy given here is that Krishna is the specialized organ of happiness. And so Prabhupada will say, like, if you take food and you try to stick it in your ear or up your nose or rub it all over your body, you're going to die of starvation. Right? If you pour water on just on the leaves of the tree is going to die for lack of water. It has to go to the specialized place. So he said, because we're so connected, and Krishna is a specialized organ for happiness, if we make Krishna happy, the happiness radiates every place else. And if we're the ones who are trying to make him happy, we're opening that connection, and the spontaneous happiness arises within. You have to try it, and you'll see. But people experience this. You do something for Krishna, and there's a happiness that comes out just kind of nowhere. So again, this is still about our happiness. Divine love is just about Krishna's happiness. So it's a selfish motivation, but it allows us to be intensely connected with Krishna. It allows us to want to please him, to want to do something that makes him happy. And so that's a useful to us. It keeps the iron in the fire. So these are two things that we can use as motivation to engage in the process of bhakti, to chant Hare Krishna, to learn about Krishna, to do service for Krishna. Even though right now we've not experienced divine love, and we can't just leverage Krishna's all attractiveness to make ourselves flame up and be intensely of service. But these things will help us to give us an incentive, an impetus, and a motivation. That we have the chance to upgrade our condition in a huge way, remove all miseries, remove the temporary, which a big misery is the temporary nature of our lives, have an eternal life, and to have full consciousness and understanding. And we know it's even better than that. It can be with full love with Krishna. So let's aim for something higher. Broaden our perspective, raise our aspirations. And that should be something that's motivating. The second thing is we want to be happy. We want to feel pleasure. So if you do something to make Krishna happy, you'll discover it. You have to become happy. The higher taste comes about. So it's the selfish motivation. But it's compatible with developing pure love. So Prabhupada gives those things to us as ways of beginning that process, motivations for keeping us having us do it. So Lakshmana is saying about selfishness. So I mean, selfishness means, right, that I mean, of course, it can mean something. Usually, when we talk about selfishness, it means extreme selfishness in this world. If somebody is really, wants their own interests and really kind of ignores other people's interests. But as long as we're thinking still of self, and we all do, as long as there's desire, as long as there's a lack of full joy, full satisfaction within us, which is the soul's real nature, then we're thinking of ourselves. We're aiming to remove that dissatisfaction, to find happiness. If I ask you, how are you feeling right now? You ask me, I know how it is. Why? Because I'm paying attention. I know how the day is going. I know how the week is gone. I'm paying attention to that. So it just means monitoring ourselves. It's the normal condition that we have here, right? We're looking. We know whether things have gone well for us this week or today, or this month, or they've not gone so well. And a lot of what we do is motivated by what's going to be beneficial for us, either directly or indirectly. That's what motivates us. Thinking of self. It's the normal condition that we have here in this world. In divine love, and that's why it's so hard for us to understand, because it's not the normal condition here. Is that Krishna is so wonderful that he just pulled. It's almost like we're so absorbed in him and his happiness and his joy that we don't have time to think of ourselves. And it's different. Usually when we talk about something selfless, right, the difference between selfish and selfless, and usually when we talk about selflessness in our world, it means that there's some austerity or there's some suffering on your part. You're making some sacrifice for somebody else. It's almost understood this was a selfless act. That in some way, there was some, you sacrifice some of your happiness for somebody else's or something else's. You save somebody, your child was in danger and you sacrificed yourself for them. You have the military heroes, right, who may sacrifice their lives for something. Or you make sacrifices, in order, maybe you're you make sacrifices, financial sacrifices to help your children get a start in life. You could have spent that money and made yourself happy right now. Bought a new car. You're going to put it in their college education. And so you may, and usually when you do that, you think that it's worth it. But there's some austerity, there's some sacrifice there nonetheless. So the selflessness in divine love has no downside. Making Krishna happy makes you happy. I mean, you don't even have time to think of your own happiness. It's just all you want to do is please Krishna. He's so wonderful. You just want to see him smile. You just want to see him this. There's not enough consciousness left over to be checking how you're feeling. You don't have to, because you're already a pure soul. So there's nothing going to be wrong. So it doesn't hurt you to do that. If you're so focused on other people's welfare that you neglect to eat and sleep, that's gonna catch up with you sooner or later here in this world. That's not going to happen in the spiritual world. If you're just absorbed in Krishna's happiness, and Krishna's just absorbed in yours, nobody's harmed. So in this world, in this moment, we're all selfish. Even if it's not to the detriment of so many other people. Usually that's what we can talk about, but we're all selfish. We're thinking of self. We can't help it. We have our needs. And we may think also of others. That's most of us will do that. But at some point we have to take care of ourselves also. Praveen says, are austerity and penance material qualities? Right? Well, it depends. Right? It depends why you're doing them. So usually, what we usually do when if there's austerity or penance, we're thinking there's a higher goal. Right? If we've decided to take up the path of bhakti, and we want to make it a priority in our lives, that means we will sacrifice some other activities, probably. And that's austerity and penance. We may sacrifice some other opportunities for fun, or some other opportunities, because we're taking time and focusing energy there. We can also try to be, it says basically, right, if you're austere, in the Yoga Sutra it says that the energy, the prana, life flows out through the senses. And so those who try to live very simply and austerely, they may also be able to build up power, build up life force. Like this was Hiranyakashipu's idea. If you're familiar with the Bhagavatam, he was doing tremendous austerity and penance, and that was for building up power. Everything depends on the purpose. Everything depends on the purpose. For us, we want to be connected with Krishna. And he says that when we become attached to Krishna, naturally knowledge and renunciation come as a byproduct. It's a different idea. So, and to some degree, we're all thinking of ourselves. We may not, hopefully, we're not only thinking of ourselves, and hopefully, we're also interested in others. But at some root level, there's some things we feel we need. So that only can change when we are fully self-satisfied, when the soul is open and we have no needs at all, or in divine love, where that satisfaction overflows into just a desire to please the other. So for us now, if we want to try to approach that goal, we have to acknowledge the fact that we're still thinking of self. And we need a motivation that is harmonious with the attainment of divine love. So those two things, desiring a higher type of existence, and broadening our aspiration, and by seeing that serving Krishna is God gives us pleasure. Mamta is asking whether Ashtanga yoga can lead you to bhakti. You can always go to bhakti, okay, but that doesn't necessarily take you there. And also, it's very difficult to do, right? If you want to do really Ashtanga yoga, okay, here's what you have to do. Okay, you have to be able to withdraw your attention from not only the physical, but the emotional and the mental pain, because this is what is dharana, withdrawing your attention from everything. It was interesting when I was first interested in spirituality, I had this somehow feeling that if I could do that, if I could just take my attention away from everything, that something cool would happen, right? But I mean, try it, right? You can close your eyes so you're not looking at anything, but you also can't be hearing anything. You can't be feeling anything. You can't be thinking anything. You have to take away your attention from your thoughts, right? You have to take your attention away from your feelings, from all those things, from your emotions. And then you'll see your real self, the soul, and you'll see the super soul, right? And so just giving things up, this is renunciation. Actually, is like renunciation. Well, renunciation is nothing. We say we give things up. We're not going to be involved in so many material things. Right. But we need to develop a connection with Krishna, because he has, even now we can get some of Krishna's all attractiveness. This is the path of bhakti. Renunciation or the concentration that it takes to do Ashtanga yoga is very rare in this world. And so what we do is we leverage Krishna's all attractiveness, and that automatically causes us to lose an interest in so many other things. Enunciation and knowledge are a byproduct of bhakti. This is what's mentioned in the Bhagavatam. And so one can come to bhakti from any platform. Somebody who is has done some other kinds of purifying process, it may help them to come in at a higher level. But bhakti is open to anyone. It has no preconditions, and no other path will necessarily lead to it. It's its own thing. It's absolutely its own thing. That's how it works. Are there any more questions right now? Are they making any sense to you, or is it too confusing? What can I do? I hope you with that. Yeah, the best time of the day, I mean, it's, of course, it's whenever you can. Although it does say, right, that the early morning hours are beautiful, right? The time, because in the very early morning, uh, many people are asleep, so the ether is clear, you're more peaceful. But whenever you can, you know, worry less if that limits you, then don't worry about that. You know, somehow be connected with Krishna, because it's possible at any time. But it says the early morning hours are really nice for chanting or for hearing about Krishna. But you know, maybe your schedule doesn't work so well with that. And if it doesn't, don't worry about it. Somehow be connected with Krishna. Somehow do it. And you'll find that it's wonderful. And you'll want to continue. So an obstacle that comes up, okay, if we follow what I've talked about so far, we maybe try to chant Krishna's name, we try to do some service for Krishna, we study about Krishna. And even though it all sounds really good, we may find, and we will find, and we do find, that we kind of don't have that much like super enthusiasm and super, yeah, motivation for it. We chant Hare Krishna and the mind is going every place, so we're kind of waiting to get done with it, and we're kind of doing this, and we're distracted by various things. Maybe we're not always thinking, oh, great, it's time to, now it's a moment for me to chant, or it's a moment for me to do service, or it's a moment for me to study. And Lord Chaitanya explains this. So this is something that happens to people. And he gives Lord Chaitanya, who's Krishna himself, he gave 8 verses of instructions, a Shikshastakam, 8 verses of instruction that summarize the whole path of bhakti. And in the first one, he talks about all the effects of chanting Krishna's name. And it's beautiful poetry. He gives you these poetic examples of like, so when you have a mirror that's covered with dust, you can't see yourself in it. So he says it cleanses the dust of the mirror of the heart, so you can see your true nature. You can see yourself as a soul. He says it bhava mahadavagni nirvapanam. That it removes all the miseries of the world. It says that this life is like being in a forest fire where all the animals are disturbed. And so it says it just calms that. It pours water on it, gets rid of this great forest fire of unhappiness in this world. Shreya Kairava Chandrika. It says that there's that just like there's a night blooming lilies. And when the moonlight hits the night blooming lilies, they blossom. So he says the holy name is like it acts like the moonlight and opens the lily of good Shreya, of good fortune for you. Right? It brings all knowledge. It says it says knowledge follows after the holy name, just like a very faithful wife may follow the husband. Vidya vadu jivanam. And it says it causes this gigantic ocean of bliss, which is increasing at every step, completely purifies the soul. He says this is what the holy name does. It produces an ocean of ever-expanding happiness. And completely purifies the soul. And then he says in the second verse, he says, Krishna just gives it to us. He just gives it to us. He says it's filled with all of his powers, his energies, Nija Sarva Shaktis. And he's just handing it to us. Anybody can do it. And he says, usually when you have like Vedic mantras, The Brahmins have to chant it. They have to have ritualistic purity. They've taken bath and fresh clothing. Sometimes at certain locations or certain times of the day they can do it. There's limitations. Right? Who can do it, when they can do it, where they can do it, what their circumstances. None of that applies to the holy name. Anybody can do it anytime, in any condition. And it's better than anything else. It gives you this divine love ultimately. And what's our attitude, he says? He says, unfortunately, Durdaivam Idrisha Mahajani Nanuraga. He says, I have nanuraga. Like anuraga means like really enthusiasm. Wow. Wow. If somebody gives you, right, if somebody gave you, $100 billion, you'd be like, wow, this is better than that. And we're like, okay, I'll try it. Do I have to do it all the time? I mean, every day? Or how much do I have to do it? Right? Or, sometimes it's kind of boring. Right? He says, this is our condition. He says, because we're unfortunate, we can't appreciate the gift. Right? And so he's hinting at a certain attitude that's causing us trouble. Vrindavan is asking about at what point do devotees do things without motivation. Like I said, this happens fully at a advanced stage where the soul is already attained, where you have a powerful connection with Krishna's all attractiveness, where Krishna draws you out of yourself. Okay? Now it happens to smaller degrees, so we're going to talk about this next. And this gratitude is the beginning of that, is how we can begin to have some connection with Krishna's all attractiveness. And Prabhupada talks about this in the Nectar of Devotion, of how this can happen to a small extent, and that can begin to grow. We can begin to deal with this even now. That's the other thing we do, is find a connection with Krishna's all attractiveness. And so Prabhupada gives this example. He says that in the temples we have the deity worship, and the priests, the pujaris, will come down early in the morning, come and wake up the deities and feed them and bathe them and dress them and decorate them in various ways. And so Prabhupada says that somebody may come to the altar in the morning by the order of the spiritual master. Okay, so it's not a spontaneous thing, but they're taking up the process with regulations, and the spiritual master has given them that service, or their whatever their local head pujari or temple president has given them that particular service, and they come and do it. And basically, but this one particular day they may come down, they want to do a particularly nice job. He says, so there's a little spontaneity, right? They did more than was required. So if you have a service to do and you want to do it particularly well, or if you're chanting and you really want to chant today and do it really well, really want to hear, there's a little spontaneity in that. Because by nature, we'll do what's required. If it's simply a should, we do what's required. But what if you really want to do it nicely today? You really want Krishna to look nicely if you're dressing the deities, or you're cooking something for Krishna, you want it really to be really nice, or you're making garlands for Krishna, that looks really nice. You're doing some other service for Krishna, you want to do it really, really, really well. Right. So that can begin to happen. Right. So yeah, so the natural thing we do now is we just we don't have real taste, so we just kind of do it, and there's still a connection with Krishna there, right? Even when there's not a real strong desire, it's helpful. but it keeps us a little bit on the superficial level. So if it's time for me to do service or time for me to chant Hare Krishna, and I'm just kind of trying, okay, this is nice and I'm gonna do it. That's okay. But what if I was like, yes, okay, this is really good. I'm really looking forward to this. I really want to hear that name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare. It's the most beautiful sound. And there's a little bit of spontaneity comes in there. We can't live on that because, right now we don't have enough connection with Krishna's attractiveness. And so the first thing that the way, the gateway towards appreciating Krishna, right, is by having gratitude. See, that's what's implied there by that second verse. That Krishna gives us this wonderful thing. The first and second verse is Shakti gives us this wonderful thing that gives us everything that we could imagine and more. He gives it to us free, tied with a little bow, and gives it to you right there. Here, please take it. The most valuable thing in existence. I just give it to you. Right? We go, oh, thanks. Right? or we're like, yeah, I should have that. And if other people have it, I should have it. Yeah, great, thanks. No problem. I'll take it. No, when somebody gives you something wonderful, you, wow, that's so nice. And you appreciate how kind they are to do it. Somebody gives you a gift that you could never have imagined you'd ever receive. So, wow. And you'll treasure that gift. And you'll appreciate that person that gave it to you so much. Tell your friends, I can't imagine they gave me this. Can you imagine they gave me this, did this for me? I never expected something like that. It's the nature to have appreciation, gratitude, joy. Krishna is, not only is Krishna amazing, but how kind he is. How open-hearted he is. How could he just do that for me? And so we begin to start thinking about Krishna's qualities, not just who he is, not what he is, but who he is. How he is so kind to just reach out and just give us this most valuable thing for free. Himself. He's giving himself to us. There's nothing better we can receive. Nothing comparable that we can receive. And he's giving it to us just free. Here you go. And so when there's some gratitude that can sneak in, some appreciation for what Krishna is giving us and the opportunity he's giving us, it changes our mentality. And we begin to appreciate something about Krishna. He becomes a little less abstract. And you can feel how he's interacting with you right now. But that's the first really big change that can happen. That can really help us to connect with Krishna's all attractive qualities. We hear about Krishna, if we read the Krishna book or we hear the Bhagavatam, and we realize that that person is interested in us, is giving himself to us freely, without any preconceptions. He didn't make us pay any big price. We just found out about the holy name. We found out about him. And he wants us to come and participate in his pastimes of love. And he said, and without having deserved it. This is the important thing, is that we didn't deserve it. It's priceless, so we can't deserve it. And we'll talk about this more. How we're going to talk about the third verse of the Shikshastakam next time. Yeah, well, we can begin to feel a connection with Krishna now. Lakshman is saying, he's asking, when at what point can we, what does he say? At what stage can we feel our connection with Krishna, and how do we feel or understand it? So that we can begin with some gratitude. We can feel like that. We can feel how wonderful it is, and we can have some appreciation for him. So there's a connection, right? It says there's a stage in devotional service called asakti, where we begin to understand what our eternal connection with him is. And that's a long ways down the line. And we'll talk about that. That's when we're going to talk next time, particularly about the ego and how that has to go down, how that has to shrink. That's where gratitude increases incredibly. And there's certain key elements of that. Yeah, and that's what sometimes says the feeling of gratitude flows sometimes, but does not remain consistently. Yeah, that's why we can't live simply on Krishna's sweetness at this point. That's why we have to have the other motivations. Okay? Because if we just flow with the times we're grateful, if we just flow with when we really appreciate Krishna, there'll be a lot of times when we won't be connected. So that's why we have to have the quote selfish motivations that'll keep us connected more. That's why we have to have that notion, hey, I want to upgrade my existence, or I want to be, if I make Krishna happy, I'll be happy. So that allows us to remain consistently connected. If we just wait for the times when we feel really grateful and feel, oh, Krishna is so wonderful, those might be few and far between in the beginning. And we'll talk next time when we start dealing with the ego, we can increase that consistency also of feeling grateful. But first we need to start and feel grateful, and then we can take it further. And it's so much of that is about ego. It really is. And we'll talk, we're kind of running out of time here, but that's where we'll pick up with it, with ego. That's what causes the gratitude to come and then to disappear. But first we got to make it come, and then we get a chance to appreciate Krishna. Well, see, the important thing in Rupa Goswami, he says that Uttama Bhakti, the highest bhakti, is without motivation. And then he's describing in the spiritual world this divine love. So how do we get there? Okay. Actually, if you look at Jiva Goswami, he says it's only there in the residence of Vrindavan in the spiritual world. Prabhupada says the same thing. He says that the motivation is never completely absent unless you don't even remember that Krishna is God any longer. There's a special thing about Vrindavan where the devotees are so captivated in Krishna's beauty and charm that they don't even remember that he's the God any longer. It pushes it to the background. If you know that he's God, you feel an obligation. Okay? So this is the thing. We cannot start off without a selfish motivation. That's why Prabhupada gives us those things. Right? That the Uttama Bhakti means at the end. So what we have to have in the beginning is pure faith. Yes, selfish motivation of the appropriate kind. Okay, so I gave you a couple that types of selfish motivations that are appropriate to lead us to divine love, and those Prabhupada gives us, right? Because right now we can't be selfless. So those two motivations, that pleasing Krishna will please you, just like watering the root of the tree gives. Yeah, appropriate means the ones of the work. I can have a selfish motivation, say I want a new car. Krishna, I want a bigger house. See, that's Prabhupada says that's a material motivation, a material selfish one. That's not so appropriate for divine love. It may help if that's the only way you connect with Krishna, do it. But Prabhupada says that without a material motivation, right? So if we want to go to the spiritual world, that's not a material motivation, right? And so that's appropriate. It can develop into, it leads us in the right way, so that we can then attain the real state. Okay? We cannot begin without the motivation, because that the way that works is with that Krishna's all attractiveness just blows our minds, and we don't have that experience yet. So what we have to have is pure faith that there's something wonderful like that out there. Okay, so the anyabilash shunyam, that happens at the end. Okay, eventually we will lose all motivations. Okay, that's a description of Uttama Bhakti, a mature form. Austerity comes from, it's a byproduct of bhakti. We lose interest in things. So austerity that's separate from bhakti, Rupa Goswami says, hardens the heart and is not helpful. We'll talk next time about ego. Okay, and so trying to be very austere and powerful, this kind of stuff, this is egoistic and actually blocks our way. I think we can overcome the material nature because I'm very powerful. He says, austerity is, this is Praveen say, austerity is not joyfully performed, but bhakti is. How can we recognize these? In the path of bhakti, we still have austere and sacrificial elements. With austerity comes as a byproduct. We lose interest in things. The austerity means that we can focus more on Krishna. That's really what it means. And sacrifice means we focus more on Krishna. Another thing is just kind of, I mean, even in this world, if you develop some really powerful interest, somebody becomes has some really powerful interest, they sacrifice other elements of their life and they do it joyfully. Right? So the sacrifice and austerity and bhakti also should be joyfully performed because they're byproducts of bhakti. If we take them separately and do them outside of bhakti, thinking we can become more qualified, it hardens our heart and makes us think that I am capable of purifying myself. We'll talk about this a lot more next time. This is ego and harmful to us. So, all right, well, we are even a couple minutes over our limit here, so let's leave that. If I'm leaving you with questions that haven't been answered, we can bring them. We can start. I'll ask you at the beginning next time if there's something you didn't get a chance to ask. But we're gonna move in next time to how to deal with ego. Again, we're gonna deeper into gratitude. We're gonna deal with the third verse of the Shastakam in a particular way, which really shows, which gets rid of so many obstacles on the path and gives us the gateway to much deeper connections with Krishna. That'll be our next one. So I appreciate you taking the time here on your busy Saturdays. We'll see you next time. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.